Well, let's talk to the journalist Roxana Saberi, somebody who spent time in an Iranian prison, jailed last on charges of espionage, later on released. Sarah Shourd said in that piece, she said, I committed no crime, and you committed no crime, but were you both guilty of naivety?
I can't speak for Sarah Shourd's case because I don't know all the details of her case. In my case, if you're asking me, I was working on a book about Iranian society, and my captors claimed that the book was a cover for espionage for the U.S. because I had been interviewing a lot of people.
Right, but the facts were that you were operating as a journalist, you had no press pass, you'd been to Israel, but they had reason to sort of take you away. If you'd been completely not naive about it, that might not have happened.
These were not reasons that they really gave for my arrest. I think the journalist operating without a press pass, according to the Iranian law, I wasn't doing anything illegal. And about going to Israel, I was a journalist in the region and I wanted to learn about the region, so I went there as a journalist, and I'd done it years earlier, so if it were really a problem, they would have gotten me much earlier. But the truth is that they acknowledged to me in private that they knew I wasn't a spy. They would never say that in public. So I think that they arrested me for political reasons, or maybe they didn't like that I could write a book that they couldn't censor.
A book which has come out now, certainly about your experience as well. But I want to pick up something that you mentioned to our producer before we came on air. They, the Iranian authorities, I guess, wrongly accuse people of being spies because they want to silence them or for political reasons. Now, that's an accusation that's often made, but you make it with what evidence?
Well, in my case, I know that they knew I wasn't a spy. They made me state a false confession that I was a spy. Otherwise, they said I could get the death penalty or stay in prison for 10 to 20 years. And they said if I said I was a spy, I could be freed.
But then you recanted this confession,
yes, I recanted it while I was still in prison.
And then they still let you go?
Actually, first, they sent me to court, and I found out later that they had announced just a few days earlier, before I recanted, that they were going to release me within days, but instead of releasing me, they sent me to court. I think I infuriated them by recanting. And when I recanted, my interrogator told me he knew from the very beginning that it was false. And then they gave me an 8-year sentence, but I think it was largely because of the international outcry that put pressure on the authorities to release me, and that's why I think it's very important for the 2 remaining high prisoners in Iran to continue to have international attention on their case, as well as other political prisoners in Iran and prisoners of conscience whose only crime was to peacefully stand up for basic human rights.
I want to ask you about conditions in Evin prison in just a moment, but I want to ask you this question. You shared a room or a cell with a lot of people who are still in prison, women of a similar age to you. Both you and Sarah Shourd were released because, not least because, you're American and have the right connections. Does that make it more difficult for those who are there who don't get the same sort of publicity?
I think it is more difficult in general for those prisoners who don't have a dual nationality or foreign passport. Although in a way it is also difficult for us who are, because we're kind of higher profile and we're maybe worth more politically to certain people in the regime. But when we have another passport, it becomes bigger news outside the country. And there are many Iranians who are not known outside, maybe even their own families and friends, and definitely not outside their country. But they deserve freedom as well.
What about conditions inside the prison? What was it like?
Well, physical torture does happen there, and we've heard many accounts, especially since last year's disputed presidential election. I did not experience physical torture myself, although I heard accounts of it as well. I was under a lot of psychological pressure, which they call white torture, which is does not leave a mark on your body, but can devastate your mind and your conscience. And it's a combination of intimidation and manipulation, and being in isolation for a prolonged period of time without access to an attorney, and then not getting the attorney of your choice, and trying to rob you of your dignity by forcing you to state things that are not true about yourself or other people. It can be psychologically devastating. I was in solitary confinement for 2 weeks. Some people are there for much longer. Small cell. You don't get to go out very often. When you do, it's like this caged-in cement area where you just walk around in a circle. I couldn't tell anybody where I was. I wasn't allowed. I was told to lie to my parents about it. you get meals when they give them to you. You go to the bathroom when you press a button and they open the door and let you go. No pen and paper, no bed, no pillow, no sheets, and so on. Some people have experienced much worse than I did.
Roxanne, I remember sitting here 15 months ago, can't believe it was that long, when you came out seeing the pictures of you looking sort of pretty tired, pretty worn out. It's good to see you here, smiling.
Yeah, I feel much better. I'm lucky to be free, and I hope that others who deserve freedom can be free as well.
Thanks for coming on the News Hour.
Thank you.